Greetings, fellow humans. I'm MartianBuu, and today we got new cards added to Hearthstone. These aren't revealed, they are already in the game. Apparently, they felt like they needed to add some more Paladin cards to the core set, so they're actually free. They're two cards that represent a new theme for Paladin auras. They kind of work like the pseudo locations from Alterac Valley and like sigils and stuff like that. So they have the little lightning bolt that show up. There are two added to the core set right now, and then they're going to add a third one in the upcoming Titans expansion. But you can play with the two in the core set starting today. I've already played with them a little bit today to kind of get a feel for them, how strong I think they are, and to come up with some ideas on what to show you as far as type of decks that you can build with them. So the two are Resistance Aura. Your opponent's spells cost one more, last 3 turns. I actually thought this was really good at first, but then I played with it. It's kind of like Rebuke, except it bothers your opponent for multiple turns. And I think that's a lot better than Rebuke. So Rebuke makes spells cost a whole lot more, but it only lasts for the 1 turn. And when I read this card, I thought you were getting 3 turns out of it because it says last 3 turns. However, that is 3 of your turns. So you play it, and then at the end of your turn, it ticks down. Your opponent has a turn with spells costing more. Comes back to your turn, you play your turn, it ticks down, and then your opponent has another turn where spells cost more. Then coming back to your turn, you play your turn, it ticks down and goes away, and your opponent can cast spells again. So your opponent's spells actually only cost 1 more for 2 turns. How much better is that than having the 3/2 body on Neophyte or the extra 4 cost for a single turn on Rebuke? I think slightly better for a couple of reasons. The first reason is 2 turns is still a lot more than 1. The second reason that this is good is because it's a holy spell, which discounts Guardian's Grace. So Guardian's Grace is the 10 cost spell that gets cheaper for the mana that you've cast on holy spells during the game. So this discounting Guardian's Grace makes it pretty decent. The real good spell though is Crusader Aura. So this one is super good because its effect matters on your turn and usually not on your opponent's turn. You do get the full 3 turns out of it. 4 mana, holy spell. Whenever a friendly minion attacks, give it +2/+1, lasts for 3 turns. This is Savage Roar that costs 1 more. However, the effect is permanent. You also get a health and you get 3 turns out of it. So like that's a lot of bonus effect for an extra mana. And much like with the other aura, this one being holy means it discounts Guardian's Grace as well. So this is really handy in pretty much every board-based Paladin deck that isn't odd moving forward. So what do those decks look like? This is Mech Paladin. I took the list from Vicious Syndicate and cut the Seafloor Saviors that are pretty mediocre and just put in the Crusader Aura. This is good generally with your mech game plan. So you go wide, get out a bunch of mechs, and they have like whatever middling attack is on them. And then much like Skyclaw, it gives you a lot of extra damage and reward for going wide. So if you get out 5 mechs, that's 10 damage, makes them a little bit stickier, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger if your opponent doesn't remove them. I found that attacking with this once is usually enough, and when it's not, the opponent usually just concedes because like it's so much damage. The reason that Resistance Aura is not a consideration for this deck is because of Stonehearth Vindicator, and it's the same reason that the Mech Aura from the set is probably not going to see any play. You always want your Stonehearth Vindicator to pull Radar Detector. This deck just wants Crusader Aura, but Crusader Aura is a pretty big buff to it. Next up we have Tax Paladin. Crab Rider, absolutely insane with Crusader Aura. Even when you're using this just from hand, you rush and attack twice, so you get +4/+2 right away, even if you're not going face. The Resistance Aura is in here. It fits the theme of the deck. You know, you want to make it harder for your opponent to do stuff. I thought it was all right. I hadn't given Guardian's Grace a chance yet when I put this list together, but then when I went back to kind of fit it in, it was a bit difficult. You know, there's a lot of really important pieces here, and there are packages that can't go lower. So like you can't cut any of the secrets or else Sword of the Fallen isn't any good. You definitely can't lose Hand of Adal or 4 Quel'Tha Loss, or Katori Lightblade isn't any good. And certainly without them, you know, like you can't cut holy spells when you're going to add the payoff for having holy spells. And then you need a certain volume of 2 drops to justify Call to Arms. So it's really hard to kind of squeeze in 2 extra pieces in a deck like this. And that got me thinking, well, as far as odd cost cards go, Conviction is the only one that really matters, right? Like the secrets are all right, Righteous Protector is fine, but they're all kind of like mediocre, at least I think. So it's not that hard to go even. And then once you go even, you have a lot of options. I was asking some buddies what they thought of my initial list, and it turned out that there's a couple ways that you can actually go with it. So one list I saw had Stand Against Darkness in it, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I thought of the Lion. So here's an even dude Paladin. The dudes go wide, so you can either play Dunbaldar Bridge and then play Stand Against Darkness, or play Stand Against Darkness and then play Crusader Aura and attack with all the dudes you just put out. So there's a lot of like go wide synergy there. Air Raid, also pretty good for going wide and getting benefits from those persistent effects. Crystalline is hilarious. Stand Against Darkness being even just ties the whole package together. It's pretty silly. I have Soldier's Caravan in here. It's nice because you can pull it off of Call to Arms, and if you don't add it, it's a little bit harder to get out enough dudes for Crystal Lion. Pretty experimental, I think, and I have found that just hero powering a couple times here and there as the game goes on, your Crystal Lion gets down to like 3 mana, and that's pretty fine. This is fun. It reminds me a lot of the Kobolds and Catacombs dude Paladin from way back when. It's just playing your Stand Against Darkness and Crystal Lion, you know, like really decent board refill, but not infinite board refill like you have with Odd Paladin. Talking through Even Paladin got me thinking the Horn of the Windlord combo is actually fully even now. Feast and Famine used to cost 1, now it costs 2 because that was pretty strong with Horn of the Windlord in Standard. But yeah, you can run that all in Even now, and it's pretty decent burst. Feast and Famine or 4 Quel'Thalas give your hero attack, and then you have your Horn of the Windlord up, and then you do a bunch of damage. It's otherwise a pretty generic Even Paladin list. It was hard to fit the bridge in here and still keep everything else the way that I wanted it, so I actually ended up not putting the bridge in. But yeah, this does give you a lot of burst, and it's really nice to have some burst that isn't reliant on you having a board. Finally, we have my first list, which is much more generic than the other two, but playing through all these, it is the one I like the most. I think this is the best of the ones I've shown you so far, outside of Mech Paladin. Mech Paladin is probably still just a better deck. But anyways, you have your bridge, you have your Crusader Aura, and your Resistance Aura, and Garden's Grace. The Horn of the Windlord is nice, but when you get the horn without the attack pieces, it doesn't feel very impressive, and I ended up like trading a bunch with it. It has its moments, but I didn't like it as much. But yeah, this is the Even Paladin good stuff pile. I would mulligan for Crab Rider and Call to Arms pretty aggressively. You can keep Narrowbar Weblord in certain matchups, so against like if you suspect your opponent is Shudderwalk Shaman, it's good to keep Weblord because as soon as they play their Murlocs, you're dead. You need to kill them before that, and this keeps their Murlocs from hitting the board. It's also helpful against Reno decks because, you know, the powerful battle cries like Zephyrus and Reno, it makes it harder for your opponent to play those. You have so many 2-drops that I would never keep one for your curve's sake. You know, you really want to have Call to Arms and Crab Rider. You'll probably get a turn 2 play otherwise. And then yeah, if you know your opponent's like Tony Druid or something, maybe you can consider keeping Resistance Aura, but I think I would only do that if I knew for a fact that they were Tony Druid. I would never do it if I just suspected. And then if you already have your Crab Rider, you can consider keeping Hand of Adal or 4 Quel'Thalas just so that you know you have something to buff it with. This is a very like all-in deck. You try to get a really powerful early lead on the board and then never lose it. Your only comeback mechanism in the whole deck is Blademaster Samro. Blademaster Samro, by the way, works really well with Crusader's Aura. And if you're running Dunbaldar Bridge, either one of them that you play on 4 activates your Samro for the following turn. It's pretty good. But so yeah, if you fall behind on board and you either don't have your Samro or you've already used it, then you're done. I don't think that this is better than Mech Paladin, but I do think it's more fun, and it's new, and there's new cards, and I think leading into an expansion, it's pretty exciting to be able to play with something new to tide you over while the hype's building in anticipation of a whole new set is festering. Some final notes. There are a couple cards that I wanted to include, but I didn't because of Nerubian Weblord. So if you're not facing things like Shudderwalk Shaman, you can consider cutting the Weblord for the sake of fun, or just because you think this is good. But Sunkeeper Tarim, obviously really good in a deck like this. You get your little tiny things out and you can make them big and you can trade through taunts a lot easier. It was really good in the past in this deck. It's just kind of a really strong card, but Nerubian Weblord makes it terrible. So if you want to cut those or just miss Sunkeeper Tarim, there he is. I had this fun idea for an ETC. It's like build your own custom Lothep. You know, you can keep a Rebuke in there for when you want to make your opponent's spells cost more. You can put a Cold Feet in there for when you want your opponent's minions to cost more. And then if you're just down on value, you can get Divine Favor. I thought this was a really cool ETC, but again, Nerubian Weblord, I actually tried this one. I was really eager to play with this ETC, but like I tried it and it really is just so awkward with Nerubian Weblord, which if we're honest is like a really important part of this deck. So if you wanted to like spice up your even decks, those are just some ideas I had that didn't work with Nerubian Weblord. Anyways, I hope that you either found something that you're interested in playing, or maybe it gave you some ideas to build something of your own. These cards look really interesting. They seem kind of strong, and I'm looking forward to playing with them more. I'll likely do a gameplay video with Even Paladin later this week. Remember to like and subscribe to support the channel, and thank you so much for watching.